Thanks so much for starting your Thursday with us. We're going to get started with a dramatic shift in U.S. policy on the war between Russia and Ukraine as the conflict approaches its third anniversary.
Yeah, Savannah, so here's the latest development. President Trump says he spoke with Russian President Vladimir Putin yesterday about starting negotiations to end the war in Ukraine. A Putin advisor says the call lasted about 90 minutes, with Putin inviting President Trump to visit Moscow. All of this coming following a sudden prisoner swap this week between the U.S. and Russia. Mr. Trump later spoke with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, which Zelensky described as, quote, meaningful conversation as he looks towards the future. Speaking at a meeting of NATO defense ministers in Brussels, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says the war must end.
I appreciate the opportunity to share President Trump's approach to the war in Ukraine. We are at, as you said, Mr. Secretary, a critical moment. As the war approaches its third anniversary, our message is clear. The bloodshed must stop, and this war must end.
All right, we are going to have reaction ahead on these upcoming negotiations when we check in with the former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, William Taylor. But let's begin with NBC News senior White House correspondent Kelly O'Donnell. Kelly, good morning. Let's start right now with that conversation between President Trump and Vladimir Putin. How did this call come about, first of all? And what did the president have to say about what kind of role Ukraine would potentially have in these negotiations?
Good morning, Sam and Savannah. This is one of the most compelling relationships on the world stage, Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. The president for quite a while had been reluctant to say whether he had spoken to him or not. And now out in the open, he is discussing a lengthy meeting where they are planning for negotiations to end this war. What is a notable shift from the Biden years when the war began and President Biden assembled a coalition of NATO support to help Ukraine is the Biden administration would say nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. Here, there's a real question about that. President Trump did speak to President Zelensky, but he has focused on the U.S. and Russia working toward a solution. And when he was specifically asked if Ukraine would be an equal partner, he called that a curious question and said that they need to work toward peace, and it's a war they never should have gotten into, ignoring the obvious that Russia invaded Ukraine and they had no choice except to defend themselves. So President Trump and President Putin are planning to have conversations, in-person meetings, and to have members of their teams begin conversations this week in Munich, where Vice President Vance is representing the president at the Munich Security Council. So Vladimir Zelensky is saying Russia does not appear to be preparing for peace because they've launched additional attacks. And yet this is a call now to change the nature of this conflict and to see if there's a path toward resolution.
Kelly, a major question here is what these borders would look like should a peace deal be reached. I mean, Ukraine has been super clear since the start that any peace deal must reestablish their previous borders with Russia. But what is the Trump administration saying about that?
Yes, and Zelensky also wants to have some security protections so that they would not find themselves back in conflict at some future date. Zelensky and Ukraine do not want to give up territory. The U.S. is saying, and President Trump is saying, that that has to be negotiated. And Pete Hegseth, speaking on behalf of the president, was saying that trying to go back to the original borders of Ukraine is unrealistic. That is certainly starting Ukraine at a deficit as these talks have yet to begin. So sort of pre-negotiating that Secretary Hegseth said there should be no NATO ascension for Ukraine, something they very much want, something that the Biden administration had believed could be attainable at some point, and that the boundaries would not be the original sovereign territory of Ukraine. So these are key issues. Is there a way to negotiate land for peace and some other kind of protection? That may be what will unfold here, but it is certainly not starting in the way Zelensky and Ukraine had hoped it would.
Yeah, so many layers, obviously, to those negotiations. Kelly, while we have you, what can you tell us about the decision by a federal judge yesterday with so many of these federal workers right now in limbo that would allow President Trump's fork in the road, so-called fork in the road offer for millions of federal workers to resign, to go forward? The plan to offer to mass buyouts that was previously halted, and I guess right now it appears to be an issue of legal standing?
That's right. So the judge who had put a pause on this program, which would allow people to defer their resignations, they could sign up for this and then be paid and get benefits for several months into the end of the fiscal year for the U.S. government, which is through September. And the judge is now saying that because unions that represent government workers had brought the suit, that the unions themselves do not have the standing. They don't have a stake in this like individual employees do. So after reviewing this, the judge is allowing the program to go forward. However, you could now envision a circumstance where individual federal employees would act as plaintiffs and bring this case. It's obviously easier for unions that have an apparatus and lawyers to make this initial claim. But for now, this program is going forward. The government says that it is now closed. They give us a number of about 65,000 federal employees who signed up for it. We don't have a way to confirm that number, but that's what we're being told of those who would like to exercise this opportunity. The other big question, Congress has not appropriated the money to pay them without work for the next several months. And so that's a question, too.
Yeah, that's a pretty significant question.
No kidding.
Kelly, thank you so much.
Thanks, Kelly. Well, for more on the proposed peace talks between Russia and Ukraine, as we were just discussing, let's bring in former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, William Taylor. Ambassador Taylor, always wonderful to have you with us. Thanks for your time. So I want to touch on a couple things that we just discussed there with Kelly. Part of this, the borders of Ukraine, what those may look like. We're actually hearing different messaging from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and President Trump when it comes to what Ukraine may have to give up in negotiations to end the war. And also, as Kelly mentioned, the president didn't give this clear answer when asked if Ukraine would be treated as an equal partner in these talks. What does that suggest to you about how this will go down and how the U.S. will approach these negotiations?
Well, Savannah, first of all, on the borders, on the question of borders, President Zelensky has already said that he is not able to take back all of the territory militarily from Russia. Russia has had about the same amount of Ukrainian territory, about 18%, for about 2 years. And President Zelensky will never give up, he says, his claim to all of that territory, all of the 1991 borders. But he has said that he can take part of that back militarily, which he has done right now and held on to 80%, 82% of Ukraine. But he has said that that last 18%, he'll never give up legal claim. And we shouldn't acknowledge the Russian territory. We should not acknowledge Russian illegal occupation of that. But President Zelensky has said he can take that back diplomatically through negotiations over time. So it's not, I think that is not that big of a change on the border question.
We also know, Ambassador, that Ukraine's future security is such a huge component of all of this. And yesterday, Defense Secretary Hegseth basically ruled out the idea of Ukraine joining NATO. It's part of the administration's new effort to offload responsibility for Ukraine's security to European nations. Now, you had written in the New York Times in October that peace depends on Ukraine's NATO membership. So I guess in your view, is that now off the table? And is lasting peace and security for Ukraine and for its neighbors, is it achievable without that?
I strongly believe, and I hear the defense secretary saying that Ukraine needs a strong security guarantee to be sure that the Russians don't invade again. Yes, I had thought and still do think that the right way, the best way, is for NATO membership. That will clearly take time. That'll take a long time. What Secretary Hegseth said yesterday, however, was that the discussions about NATO membership for Ukraine will not be part of the negotiations. And that's right. Sam, that's exactly right. You don't want to discuss NATO membership for Ukraine with the Russians. That's certainly not part of the negotiation. That's a decision for Ukraine and NATO and individual European allies. The other thing that the Secretary Hegseth said was that the Europeans need to provide the bulk of the security guarantee. And it turns out, of course, as you've been reporting, that the British and the French and other Europeans have been having conversations about exactly how to do that, how to actually provide some kind of security guarantee with even European troops on the ground in Ukraine to be sure that the Russians don't invade again. So this is the way that the negotiations may go.
Ambassador William Taylor, I'm sure we'll be talking to you again as this all unfolds. Thanks for joining us.
All right, back now in Washington, Savannah, the criminal defense attorney who represented President Trump in his hush money case, now facing Some pretty tough questions over his ability to remain apolitical and impartial if he is confirmed for the powerful role of Deputy Attorney General. NBC News' Laura Jarrett has the full details.
The United States Department of Justice must protect this nation.
President Trump's former personal attorney turned top DOJ nominee clashing with Democratic lawmakers on Capitol Hill.
I will follow the rules as told to me by the experts, career prosecutors in the department when it comes to every recusal.
I've heard that.
But it's true.
Well, it may be true in the abstract.
No, it's not abstract. It's true.
Well, senators also pressing Todd Blanche on everything from President Trump's recent executive orders to the abrupt firing of several watchdogs across multiple federal agencies.
Do you think he broke the law by firing these attorneys general, these inspectors general?
I don't know. I wasn't part of the decisions that he and the White House counsels made.
8 of those federal watchdogs fired by Mr. Trump banding together in a new lawsuit arguing the president failed to give Congress a 30-day heads up required by law.
IGs are independent. We're nonpartisan, which means that we are the taxpayers' advocates within each of government agencies.
The legal challenges to the president's efforts to reshape the government mounting. The administration now racking up more than 50 civil lawsuits since Inauguration Day on everything from the use of Guantanamo Bay to proposed funding freezes. Judges across party lines issuing injunctions bringing a halt to nearly a dozen different Trump policies or actions.
I follow the courts. I have to follow the law. Hopefully the courts will be fair. They don't have to be very fair. They just have to be a little bit fair because this is so egregious what's taken place.
While a sitting member of the highest court, Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor, now warning of the dangers of an erosion to the rule of law.
Court decisions stand whether one particular person chooses to abide by them or not. It doesn't change the foundation that it's still a court order that someone will respect at some point.
Interesting words from a Supreme Court justice there. Our thanks to Laura Jarrett for that report.
Well, a full Senate vote is planned for later today on President Trump's controversial nominee, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., to lead the Department of Health and Human Services. This comes after Tulsi Gabbard was sworn in as Director of National Intelligence. Meanwhile, Democrats in Congress are demanding more answers about Elon Musk's role in the Trump White House. NBC News senior correspondent Tom Costello has the latest from Washington.
President Trump back in the Oval Office one day after an extraordinary appearance with Elon Musk.
I want to commend Elon because he's done a fantastic. He doesn't need this. You know, he's abused by you people every day.
Outlining his plans to reshape the government. While on Capitol Hill, the House subcommittee that oversees Musk's Department of Government Efficiency is searching for answers from DOJ employees. Republicans defend the cutbacks and the firings.
President Trump won an electoral landslide with a clear mandate from the American people to eliminate Washington waste.
Democrats want an in-person explanation from Musk, but Republicans blocked that.
Come and testify in front of the American people under oath, because we want to know what you're up to.
DOJ says it's looking to save taxpayers money, but inflation numbers suggest Americans are already paying more.
Welcome to the age of Trumpflation.
The cost of almost everything ticked up last month. President Trump blamed former President Biden for inflation, despite promising this as a candidate.
I will immediately bring prices down starting on day one.
Yeas are 52, nays are 48. Nomination is confirmed.
Better news for President Trump. His controversial pick to lead the intelligence community has been confirmed. Nearly all Republicans voted to confirm Tulsi Gabbard, despite concern that Gabbard made sympathetic comments about Russia, supported Edward Snowden, who leaked classified information, and had no experience in the intelligence community. Only Senator Mitch McConnell joined Democrats in opposition.
Our thanks to Tom Costello for that report.
All right, so 2 U.S. Navy crew members ejected safely, thankfully, before their fighter jet crashed into the San Diego Bay. This happened on Wednesday. Look at this. That's the moment that the U.S. Navy Growler plunged into the water near Shelter Island yesterday morning. Luckily, the 2 service members on board had already both ejected before the crash and were quickly pulled from the water, get this, by a nearby fishing boat. The extent of their injuries was not disclosed at the time, but the military said that they are in stable condition. The cause of that crash is under investigation.
Just more and more air incidents
So
that we
many.
keep having to tell you about. All right, well, now let's get to the latest winter storm. It's slamming parts of the country with heavy snow, ice, and freezing temperatures.
Kind of experienced this firsthand, actually.
Lovely.
This morning, tens of millions of people are under winter weather alerts as the storm is set to dump even more snow on states from the upper Midwest to northern New England. Meantime, out west, California bracing for what could be its biggest storm of the season that's packing heavy rains. Some of the areas scarred by the wildfires around Los Angeles are bracing for the risk of flash floods and mudslides from the storm. NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa.
Jinx is in Chicago with more for us. Maggie, good morning. I feel for you. I feel like every time I've seen the TV in the last 24 hours, you've been out there. So hopefully you've been getting more as well.
You're not wrong.
I know yesterday I saw some of the snow falling on you.
Poor Maggie.
I know. This hat, I had to throw my hat in the dryer. Like, that's how dire it got out here, guys. And Savannah, I feel your pain. Yeah, it is crazy how fast this snow came down yesterday in Chicago. We had nothing on the ground, for reference, 24 hours ago. And now we had nearly the largest snowfall of the entire season. And really, it came down roughly in the course of like 6 to 8 hours. So it was really rapid. Across the Midwest, across the upper Great Plains, we saw highways, roads were a mess. Air travel was a mess. We had well over close to 5,000 delays, topping that by the time I got close to midnight last night. So it was just a mess across the country, really. And as you said, it's just been a relentless week of winter weather. We had that storm earlier this week pounding the East Coast. Yesterday, it was kind of the Midwest and Great Plains who got hit. And people here, even in this region, who are used to this kind of weather, were really caught off guard. Here's some of what we heard.
I was kind of surprised because I didn't know snow could fall that fast.
You didn't know snow could fall that fast?
Same.
Yeah, this definitely feels like the most this winter. He and I are from Minnesota, and so we're used to the snow. We're used to the cold and the snow, and certainly getting shades of that here.
Yeah, so here in the Midwest, as we said, we're used to this, but even for us, this was a lot. Guys, one of the sort of more dire headlines across the region as well, in Virginia, well over 100,000 people were without power thanks to falling trees that happened as a result of this storm. Crews, thankfully, have been working rapidly to get that power turned back on, and they made a lot of progress. But it really caused chaos across a huge part of the country, guys.
Yeah, tens of thousands of people there. I also, by the way, was very interested in Maggie's hat game, which is stupendous, by the way. Maggie, let's turn for a second to the storm that's going on the West Coast here, bringing all this drenching rain. It's been a little bit more than a month since the Southern California wildfires, which, of course, left behind thousands of acres of bare ground. So now in the coming days, having that context, how worried are officials about the threat of dangerous mudslides and flash floods?
They're really worried. We saw officials in Santa Barbara County issuing an evacuation warning, just letting people know if they're still in that area, because keep in mind, a lot of people haven't been able to go back home. Like, it's not livable, as you can see, but just letting them know that the peak of these rainstorms is expected to hit today, with some forecasters saying they could see up to an inch per hour falling. Of course, you're looking at file video of the burned area. This is now getting slammed by that deluge of rain. But, you know, it's worth noting, scientists say whenever you've had a burned area, and guys, we know this well, any kind of rain, any significant amount of rainfall can make it really susceptible to mudslides, because everything has been loosened. A lot of the plant life has been killed, and those roots help solidify it. So this is a really dire situation that, of course, our forecasters and our teams out west will be watching closely throughout the next 24 to 48 hours.
All right, Maggie, please go inside. We appreciate you being out there. Thank you so much.
All right, and of course, no rest for the weary right now. As Maggie was suggesting, let's get a closer look at how these stormy conditions may impact you with our Morning News Now weather.
Yeah, Angie Lassman's here in studio with us. Hi, Angie, good morning.
Hi, guys. Good morning to you. We've got plenty of alerts still up as far as the winter storm is concerned across parts of the east. 26 million people, mainly focused across parts of the northeast, and we've got a couple of these still hanging on in parts of Michigan. These are going to start to expire as that system works farther away, but we've still got some rain across parts of the Appalachians, parts of the south, stretching from the mid-Atlantic down south. And then, of course, this wintry mix that's kind of hanging out in the northern portions of New England. This is going to exit through the day, but we'll still be left with some of these lingering snow showers. So we're not completely done with the system just yet, but we're going to see those improvements as the day goes on. This is going to be something you'll notice. We'll still see some of those kind of cold winds bringing in some of that lake effect snow downwind of the Great Lakes. And that's where you'll see those highest amounts. The brighter pinks, that's about 8 inches, less than that farther away from the lakes. Otherwise, the ice still accumulating in those northern portions of of New England. This is, again, going to make travel difficult, especially this morning for folks there. But we will see those improvements as the day goes on. Still some flash flood alerts up right now, 19 million people included in those as we kind of wrap up the rain there. But then we go out west, and as Maggie mentioned, this is our next storm system that we're going to watch through the day today and potentially down the line as we get into the next couple of days. 32 million people under flood alerts. And notice there's flash flood warnings in parts of Northern California and Central California. Those are just going to continue to be added on. So unlike the winter alerts that are going to continue to expire, these alerts out west, I think, are going to be added on through the day, today specifically, and maybe even into tomorrow. Big picture look, this system arrives here through our afternoon hours today, but notice all the heavy rain. It's not just one part of California. This is really going to be affecting most of the state with the heavy rain and that mountain snow. Of course, they need the rain, so this is, a positive in some aspects, but we, of course, have been talking about the burn scar areas, and that's where we'll see that biggest risk for some flash flooding through the day today and potentially lasting into tomorrow. Notice the rain kind of wraps up, especially in Southern California, where we're most concerned, but we'll still see some of that snow and kind of lingering rain showers across parts of California and shifting east into parts of the Rockies. Now, rainfall totals, 1 to 3 inches for the coasts and the valleys. That still is enough to really cause problems when it comes to flooding concerns in that region. The ground just not going to absorb a whole lot of that. We do have, of course, higher amounts that we're going to expect for the coastal mountainous regions, 6 to 10 inches. You can see places south of Victorville, east of Los Angeles. That's where some of those higher amounts are going to be, guys. But this will be something that we watch through tomorrow. And then we've got another storm system that we'll watch across the country and impact folks for really the whole country as we get into the weekend.
And these poor folks in Southern California now
Yes.
to deal with another potential crisis.
Exactly.
Everything that's happened in the last few weeks.
Indeed.
So scary. Angie, thank you so much. We'll see you next hour.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.